Today we're here to talk about Aquarius risings in relationships. This is part 2. And this is the part where we are going to address composite charts. In my video on the archetypal life paths of different rising signs, I go over how the rising sign defines this archetypal journey through each of the houses. In these relationship videos, I speak about the different relationships that are possible for the different rising signs. This video is not about what it means to have an Aquarius rising composite chart. It is about how Aquarius rising individuals create different composite charts and have different opportunities for different kinds of relationships within their Aquarius rising journey. In part 1 of Aquarius rising and relationships, I talk about the Aquarius rising chart and its potential for relationships and the types of relationships that it's likely to have. So you can go and check that out, but you also don't need that information to watch this video. This video specifically focuses on composite charts for Aquarius rising. And now with composite charts, you can have a composite chart between anything, right? A composite chart uses the astrological principle of midpoints. What is the middle point between two things? And creates an individual chart of the relationship between those things. So I can use my chart to look at my relationship to anything. I combine it with its chart. So I can look at my relationship with my father by combining my chart with his chart. I can look at my relationship with my husband by combining my chart with his chart, with my children, with my city, with my country, right? So when we're talking about these relationships, there's really an endless possibility of how we can dive into this, right? So it's not just romantic relationships. We have a composite chart with every individual. And what a composite chart represents is the relationship itself. And we take a look at the relationship to see what its inner journey, what its outer journey, what its truth, what its gift, what its potential pitfalls have, right? We are looking at the arc of the relationship, how much conflict exists inside of it. And then what we also have with the composite chart is now we can look at the synastry between the individual chart and the composite chart. And what that gives us is how each individual will experience their relationship differently. So this is getting very complicated very fast, but we are talking about both what the combination is, the karmic soul or potential of the relationship as embodied by the composite chart. And we're also talking about how easy or difficult it is going to be for the different people participating in that relationship to understand, to integrate, and to deal with the relationship itself. It's a lot. Now, my deeper philosophy about this is in the relationship between Jung's idea of the transcendent function, which is a function of us relating to ourselves, but I would also go so far to say are relating to each other, that moves us forward along this path of individuation through seeking to bring into relationship and to bring into a kind of harmony and communication between the unconscious and the conscious. And there is almost nowhere that is so ripe for us to come into contact with our own and others' unconscious than in relationships. And so this is a powerful tool for us to evolve, individuate, live deeper into our story of both transcendence and depth, to increase our capacity to experience the world and our unique journey through it. And in so doing, to discover our own wholeness and the potential wholeness in the world. Okay. If you have made it this far, we are going to now step into the Aquarius Rising journey with composite charts. And I first want to give you just a quick way to calculate composite charts. Okay, here is how to look at the composite chart of any relationship. This is on astro.com. I love it because it's totally free and you can do so much. I have Solar Fire, and I prefer the astro.com composite charts because Solar Fire really struggles with whole sign composite charts. Okay, so from astro.com, I'm going to click on charts and calculations. I am going to go to extended chart selection. It's going to give me a lot of different options here. So I am going to go to chart type, and I'm going to look in there. There's lots of different options. I'm going to choose composite chart midpoint method, and another thing for selecting someone's chart is going to pop up. So we can just use this person's chart. This is my mom. And when we go in to see the chart, it is going to provide a composite chart of our relationship. And so you can see the composite ascendant of this is Sagittarius. So I'm going to listen to this video for when it's talking about composite rising relationships that are Sagittarius rising. I can go in and I can switch it with different ones. So let's see what it looks like if I just switch it to be with my grandmother. Okay, my grandmother and I have an Aries rising relationship. So that's what I'm going to look for. So that's a quick and easy way to look up composite charts. Okay. So that was a quick way to calculate composite charts. Okay. So I want to start with the fact that it is not possible within composite charts to have, for an individual to have the ability to have a composite chart with any rising sign. This is really, really important. So as an Aquarius rising, it is never possible for me to have a Leo rising relationship with anything. So that's really important, right? I cannot have a Leo rising relationship. And I think what that is integral to what it means to be an Aquarius rising. Also, I cannot have a Virgo rising or a Libra rising or a Cancer rising or a Gemini rising. All of those are out. So 5 signs in composite charts are out of the possibility. So that means that for Aquarius rising, you can have a Scorpio rising, Sag rising, Capricorn rising, Aquarius rising, Pisces rising, Aries rising, or Taurus rising. We've got 7 possibilities, and they yield very different things. So I'm going to speak about them both in how those relationships show up, and also what those relationships might be good for or not good for, depending on the rising sign, as they relate to the Aquarius rising birth chart. You got that? So we are going to talk about, okay, what does it mean if you have a Scorpio rising relationship with somebody? And, right, what kind of relationship, a business relationship, mentor relationship, right? What that might be good for and what it might be a little bit more difficult for. So here we go. We're going to start with the Aquarius rising relationship itself. So it is possible for an Aquarius rising to have an Aquarius rising composite relationship if they're in a relationship with another Aquarius rising, a Capricorn rising, or a Pisces rising. So all of those can average back to Aquarius rising. And this, I would go so far to say, all other things being equal, Aquarius rising relationships, they are generally harmonious, but there is not a lot of commitment there, right? Aquarius requires freedom. It requires the ability to come and go. If you constantly demand presence from Aquarius rising, you will be disappointed. There can be feelings of abandonment and neglect. Aquarius is doing these journeys of zooming all the way out, of diving into the past, of thinking about the future, of looking at things from many different angles, from the utilitarian angle. What they are not going to be tuned in to the emotional needs and the needs of the relationship consistently. And when you get either two Aquarius risings doing this or a composite Aquarius rising chart, what you get is something that, right, can come together for these moments when both people are present for a lot of interest and a lot of, fascinating conversations and interesting experiences that deepen the Aquarius rising's understanding of themselves. But what you don't tend to get, and my only hesitancy here is that there are other parts of the composite chart that could compensate for this a little bit, that could build some kind of strong commitment there, maybe. But what you don't tend to get is the relationship that's going to last if you don't run into each other, right? Last in terms of like stay really close and really in contact all of the time. But it can be an interesting relationship in terms of moving along your journey of understanding yourself in moments, right? That movement is not going to come through consistency because Aquarius rising has too diffuse a sense of self to have that consistency. Okay. I am going to talk about the rising signs rising up towards the 10th house, and then we'll jump down to the 4th house and come back around. So another possible composite rising sign for Aquarius rising is Capricorn rising. So you can have a Capricorn rising relationship with a Capricorn rising, with a Sagittarius rising. Yeah, with a Cap or a Sag rising, depending on the degrees, right? Where that midpoint is going to fall within Capricorn rising. Capricorn rising relationships tend to be very practical for practical purposes. They have concrete goals. There's generally a commitment, a sense of purpose, even duty within this relationship, right? We generally see that these are good for business relationships. These are kind of the power couples, even if it's not a romantic relationship, of we're going to go into a situation and we're going to take charge of it. together, and we look to each other for very practical assistance, or right, there's generally a little bit of competition. And sometimes there can be some funny power dynamics within it. So it's really important that the partners within this relationship are of equal strength and that they go through a process of rupture and repair, which is essential for any relationship, but one of mutual respect. Otherwise, this relationship can get locked in unhealthy power dynamics. And especially with Aquarius Rising, when the Aquarius Rising is one of the participants in this relationship, because the relationship falls within the 12th house of ego dissolution and of things that get out of control, of us getting out of control. And right, the 12th house is also the place of hidden enemies. So leaning into this dynamic too much, leaning into the Capricorn piece, it's alluring and it might feel familiar because Capricorn is the other sign besides Aquarius that Saturn is the traditional ruler of. So there's something we can get really lost in the sense of productivity, in this sense of, no, if I work hard enough, it's going to work. And yet there is a distortion of self that happens there. There is a concrete, almost more pessimistic way of thinking that Aquarius will need to and will end up reacting to get distance, because that is what Aquarius does to Capricorn. Aquarius separates from Capricorn, says we are too embedded in trying to force this to happen, and I am going to leave. So Capricorn rising relationships can be very potent too, because they will bring up repressed material from the 12th house. They will bring up stuff that you do not want to see, that you have so successfully lied to yourself about, that you are unconscious of. We'll bring it up, and there will be moments when you have to deal with stuff. And whether or not you can do that will decide the fate of the relationship, right? These are hard-working relationships. Capricorn rising does not know how to take breaks, but Aquarius very much needs to take breaks. So, not the easiest. Can be fun for a while, right? But again, not the easiest. Now, that brings us to what maybe is the easiest. Sagittarius rising relationships for Aquarius risings can be made with other individuals who are Libra risings. In fact, all Libra risings will have a composite Sag rising. So I think Libra risings are some of the absolutely best friends for Aquarius risings. Go and say Libra risings and Aquarius risings can be besties because their composite charts of Sagittarius will always fall within the 11th house of friendship for Aquarius rising. So these are beautiful friendships, and they've got all of the trappings of Sag, right? So we're talking about the philosophical discussions, the pursuit of knowledge and the questions, the traveling, the exuberance, the optimism, the fun, right? This way in which Libra rising is going to be mirroring Aquarius rising, but without a tremendous amount of value judgment, at least in the ascendant space. So really, really fun, exuberant, exploratory relationships that are ruled by Jupiter and have a sense of adventure and learning and questioning and pursuing and the truth at their core. There's a resilience to them that is really, really beautiful. Now you could also potentially get a Sagittarius rising relationship if the Aquarius rising ascendant was at the very end of Aquarius and the Scorpio rising was at the very beginning of Scorpio, then you could be pulled into a Sag rising relationship. So there's that potential there too. And I think that that is really significant because, or, right, could you get it with Virgo rising? I think that's also possible. Maybe. So, right, we have that potential there as well, but it is guaranteed with Libra rising. So a lot of fun. And I think that's especially meaningful when the Aquarius rising has the midheaven in Sag, because part of those connections that really grow the sense of self and have an exuberance and finding partnership and kinship in that space is really important to the life work of the Aquarius rising. Now, if an Aquarius rising is in a relationship with a Virgo rising or a Leo rising, depending on the degree, we can end up in a Scorpio rising relationship. And Scorpio rising relationships in the 10th house for Aquarius rising, these are bold and pivotal relationships. I think that, right, we talk about the 10th house a lot with career and purpose and life's work, but it's also the things that end up being like the really big deal pivot points. Transits to the 10th house, but especially these relationships that are in the 10th house, right? Astrology, like most things, originally found its template in the life of male humans that had many more freedoms and the sense of destiny, right? Obviously, not all of them, but, right? Part of a traditionally female experience throughout history is in, right, status coming through partnership. And so in some ways, the destiny and the life's work and the accomplishment of the 10th house can also look like, right, who you end up with. It can look like the relationship as a piece of work. It can look like motherhood as a piece of work. It can look like many other things now. But I think that, right, a kind of corrective measure for history is including these significant relationships that change us in the 10th house, right? Now, I'm not saying that they don't belong in the 7th house, right? The 7th house is where we actually do the relating, but the 10th house is where the relationship becomes an accomplishment or a defining feature of the life. So, composite Scorpio relationships. Composite Scorpio relationships are complicated and intense. They can be deeply sexual, deeply transformative, right? The 10th house is also how we relate to power. And that is super complicated with Scorpio there because Scorpio is so oriented towards power and submission and how we deal with integrating these darker parts. And for Aquarius rising, to truly relate to self, the darkness has to be identified with publicly. Otherwise, it feels like a lie. It feels like we're lying to ourselves. So there is this kind of the private world becomes public. And that Scorpio wants to hide it. And yet, in order for Aquarius rising to have integrity, it must be exposed in some way. And so these relationships, the Scorpio rising relationships, they get to the core and they launch you into the public and change the course of your life in obvious ways that other people can see. Very powerful and transformative. They invite you into your own sense of authority, which is how we heal from trauma, right? When we experience trauma, the authority and the agent of change was outside of us, and we were helpless in the moment, in the face of it. And, right, to restore that sense of agency and self-efficacy, the authority comes back into us. And these relationships have the potential to do that. And part of the life path of Aquarius Rising with Scorpio in the 10th is understanding and reintegrating their own sense of power and trusting themselves to hold it. We're going to drop down into the 4th house, into the place of safety and instinct and naturalness for the Aquarius Rising, where they remember that they are not just a brain on a balloon string, but the sense of embodiment and the sense of connection and this grounded earthiness. And I think for Aquarius Risings looking for long-term partnerships, whether that be in marriage and romantic relationships, but also, with roommates or, right? One of the best relationships that you can have for that sense of grounding and that sense of safety is a Taurus rising relationship that lights up your 4th house. It is Venus ruled. And like I said in my synastry video, a really good candidate for this is Cancer Rising, Aquarius Rising and Cancer Rising coming into Aquarius Rising. They might not always, right? Some of them might average into an Aries Rising. For some of them, the Aquarius Rising and the Cancer Rising ending up in Taurus will be a beautiful combination because Cancer Rising has Libra in their 4th house. So you get both of them ruled by Venus, and you get this real grounded quality for the Aquarius Rising in this harmonious, this safety and the simplicity. Also possible, I think, with Leo Rising, depending on the degree, to end up with the Taurus Rising. And with all of the complication of the headspace and what it means to be an Aquarius Rising and what it means to have Scorpio in the 10th, having home be this place of safety and nourishment and simplicity and comfort is very important. Also a place of beauty, right? For Aquarius Rising, Venus also rules the 9th, right? We want to come into a harmonious and beautiful idea of how the world works. And the other Venusian house is having a beautiful space. Aries Rising. Aries Rising has a similar feel. I feel like the Aries Rising journey, right? It's mission driven, it has leadership potential, but it's also project based. So again, not necessarily a super long-term relationship, right? It's in the 3rd house, which is kind of the house of convenience. It is, right, the people that we're in relationship with because we're always around them, right? Our neighbors, our roommates, our siblings, growing up, our extended family. These are the familiars, but they're not necessarily chosen. They're kind of like, this is the context that we're in. And with Aries in the third house, right, we've got this kind of, right, like we're relating because we're working on the same thing together. And so Aries rising relationships, they also need that freedom to kind of like, yay, we're doing this and now we finished it, and like I'll reach out to you the next time we're going to work on something together. Yeah, it can be. So these are not necessarily close, long, intimate, committed relationships, but they can be very productive and they can also be very fun, which is very important, right? So we've got this kind of, we are going quickly. And so we will always end up with an Aries rising chart with anybody that is a Gemini rising. We can also get it with different combinations of degrees with a Taurus rising. Yeah, it's Gemini and Taurus rising. Yeah, we look to Mars. Finally, our final possibility is Pisces rising. We can get a Pisces rising composite chart by, depending on the degree, be in a relationship with someone who is a Pisces rising or who is an Aries rising. And the Pisces rising relationship, I think, can soften Aquarius rising because it creates this kind of porousness, or this like, right? It asks for Aquarius's scintillating intellect to think on mystical matters, right? To think of really what is at the root of their worldview, which I will go out on a limb and say it is this mysterious sense of faith. It is a curious and hidden mysticism that is the greatest resource of Aquarius rising. And so relationships that bring that up can be uncomfortable because they are calling Aquarius rising out of their safe skepticism and poking them with these intuitions of fate and faith and asking them, how strong? What is there? Now, it can also, this can be in the like potentially good way, the supportive way. Now, it can also be in the sense of doubt. Certainty versus doubt can be a theme of Pisces relationships for Aquarius. Now, these relationships can be more painful for Pisces risings than Aquarius risings because the Aquarius rising is going to light up the Pisces rising's 12th house. So a little bit of that discomfort, but can be supportive of kind of creating wealth. And I think more, if we're talking about the second house traditionally and like the accumulation and holding on of stuff, which is hard for Aquarius rising, it's better if it's coming from an Aries rising because it's a project based of like, okay, we're going to like discover this stuff or acquire this stuff. We're going to fill up our second house. We can come together by a sense of shared values. And that's how we're going to work together. And then again, right? Pisces is not a sign that holds on. So there's not a lot of kind of glue. I think the gluiest relationships for Aquarius rising are Taurus and Scorpio. The ones that stay together because they are fun are Aries and Sag. And then, right, this kind of boundariedness around Saturnian rising relationships you find in Aquarius and Capricorn. I hope you found this video helpful and insightful for Aquarius risings, on your relationships, and for anyone who is in a relationship with an Aquarius rising with one of these composite rising signs. I would love to hear about your relationships with different rising signs. I will go on and I will make a part 1 and part 2 about relationships for every rising sign as I work through this. If you would like more attention and a look at the entire chart, the composite sun, etc., you can book a reading through my website and we will go piece by piece discovering the potential and the potential difficulties within your relationship. And I would be honored to be on that journey with you. Thank you so much. See you next time.